Every girl in the galaxy wants a guy they can fix. And Rey thinks Kylo is the perfect project. But does she? Really? If you want to find out more, keep watching.
Hello, what have we here?
Hello there. Welcome back to the channel where we love to talk about Star Wars rumors. In this video, we will be discussing the rumor that Rey and Kylo will be hooking up by the end of the Rise of Skywalker. First off, what are your thoughts on Reylo? Are you a fan and can you see this relationship as clear as day? Or do you think the Reylo shippers need to get their heads checked? Before we get into this, if you are easily triggered by people not agreeing with Reylo, you're welcome here, but please hear me out and try and look at the evidence I present. And on a more serious note, even though I did not set out to make a dark video, abusive relationships are a common theme that I found between Rey and Kylo. If you're upset by these themes, maybe this video isn't for you. Let us start with a quote from Daisy Ridley. "It does not bother me, people writing theories," Ridley said. "It's fun hearing them. Plus, I know what's sort of going to happen. I think it'll be really interesting to see people's reaction to the final film. Obviously, there's this whole Reylo thing and some people are very passionate about it. Some aren't. JJ does deal with it. It's a very complex issue. People talk about toxic relationships and whatever it is. It's no joke and I think it's dealt with really well because it's not skimmed over." Notice Daisy said that she sort of knows what's going to happen. There have been rumors of many reshoots and many different versions of the ending. So one thing we can take away from this is that it's possible there is an ending out there where Rey and Kylo become partners in love. But the only way to see this logically is to look at the established past between Rey and Kylo. Let's start at the beginning. The first Kylo hears of Rey in The Force Awakens is when he's told BB-8 has escaped from Jakku with Finn, accompanied by a girl.
What girl?
Next, we see Snoke telling Kylo,
"There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?" "Yes."
I believe Snoke and Kylo knew of Rey before her awakening. Rey first sees Kylo in a Force vision after touching the Skywalker saber. After her Force vision, she runs out of the Maz's castle and into the woods where Kylo hunts, stalks, and intimidates her. When they finally meet, the first words he says to her are,
"The girl I've heard so much about."
He then exerts dominance over her while trying to steal information from her while penetrating her mind against her own will. Kylo sees the map in Rey's mind, then takes her away to Starkiller Base and imprisons her. Rey wakes up restrained in a chair with Kylo creepingly watching her. They have their first ever conversation. Well, the first time Rey is able to speak back to Kylo anyway. He acts like such a creep in this scene, like he's trying to prove something. He removes his mask and looks for Rey's reaction to seeing his face. She honestly doesn't look impressed. Kylo wastes no time interrogating her and gets back to the business of finding out more about this map. And again, he enters her mind against Rey's will. Kylo tells Rey he can take whatever he wants, and Rey tells Kylo she won't give him anything. Rey also gets a glimpse into Kylo's mind and sees the darkness within it. Not only is Kylo filled with fear, he is also scared he won't be as strong as Darth Vader.
You're afraid that you will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
After a failed attempt to retrieve the map to Luke Skywalker from Rey's mind, Snoke tells Kylo to bring her to him. Rey is rescued, and the next time she sees Kylo, she witnesses him murder his father, Han Solo, in cold blood. If you've witnessed a murder or know someone who has been murdered, you can never see the murderer in the same eyes again. Even Chewie, who would have held Ben Solo as a baby and spent countless hours with him while Ben was growing up, took a shot at him. Chewie then sets off all the detonators while Ben is still standing on the bridge and leaves him for dead. This here says a lot. Rey flees Starkiller Base with Finn, but before they can leave, they're intercepted by Kylo.
"We're not done yet."
Kylo immediately disables Rey and Finn takes up the fight to protect her. Just as Rey regains consciousness, she sees Kylo slowly torturing Finn, her friend who has helped her leave Jakku and also assisted in her rescue from Starkiller Base. If you ask me, she's also started developing feelings for Finn at this point. For a split second, Finn gains the upper hand, but Kylo quits fooling around, disarming Finn as well as maiming him. Rey has just watched all of this, and this is what triggers her to have her awakening moment. And I must say, this is probably one of the best scenes in The Force Awakens, especially with the Force theme adding to a pivotal moment. Rey and Kylo slog it out for a while until Kylo backs her against a newly formed cliff. This is where he clearly states what he wants for her. He says he can teach her the ways of the Force, and not just so they can be boyfriend and girlfriend. Kylo wants Rey for her power and he wants to use it to his advantage. Rey then catches him off guard and gains the upper hand. He is no longer trying to capture her so he can take her to Snoke, but he is actually fighting for his life. She is not looking at him with a twinkle in her eyes. She wants to end the threat he poses to her, Finn, and the rest of the galaxy. Does this look like love to you? If the ground didn't break apart between them, she would have killed him with no regrets. This is the last look she gives him before they meet again in The Last Jedi. Rey finds Finn almost dead from Kylo's hand, and thankfully, Chewie comes in the Falcon to leave Starkiller Base before the whole planet erupts. The Force Awakens ends with Rey saying goodbye to Finn, who's been almost killed by Kylo. She then travels to Arc 2 with Chewie, and I'm sure Rey and Chewie talked about what they'd just been through and how sad they were that Han had been killed by Kylo. So before we jump into The Last Jedi, please let me know in the comments if you've seen any evidence for Reylo so far. Is there any way Rey could have any romantic feelings or any kind of attraction whatsoever for Kylo? And is there any reason Kylo would have romantic feelings for Rey? It's clear and obvious he's an abuser who just wants her for her power. Now, The Last Jedi is where Reylo begins to send out the feels for the Reylo shippers. If you squint really hard and completely ignore The Force Awakens and the evidence we're just about to get into from The Last Jedi, Reylo could be a possibility. During their first Force connection, Rey instinctively tries to kill Kylo, and he commands her to bring Luke Skywalker to him. Rey tells Kylo he's going to pay for what he did, and Kylo seems way too chilled out compared to how we saw him at the end of The Force Awakens. He was after blood and following orders from Snoke. Now, just a day or two later, he seems to be sulking and a sensitive New Age guy. This is not how we left him in the previous movie. His character inconsistencies between episodes 7 and 8 are probably one of the reasons that give Reylo shippers so much hope. Some people say we never see Rey smile. We do see her smiling in this scene before her second Force connection with Kylo. That smile soon turns to scorn, and when Rey sees Kylo, she calls him a murderous snake. This is obviously showing us that she still has aggressive feelings towards him. Kylo does seem disappointed with Rey's reception of him. Kylo then asks Rey if Luke has told him about the night he destroyed the Jedi Temple. It's at this point where Rey's attitude towards Kylo starts to slowly change, but only after he's planted a seed of doubt in her mind. Kylo recalls their battle in the forest and how Rey has the same look in her eyes as she did then. In Rey's second lesson with Luke, he tells her of the failures of the Jedi and how because of them, they trained a young Jedi who turned into Darth Vader, who then wiped out the Jedi. Rey is quick to point out that it was a Jedi who saved and turned Anakin back to the light side. Luke then talks about the potential he saw in Ben and gives his first account on how he confronted Ben and how Ben turned on him. Rey expresses her need for a teacher and also tells Luke that he didn't fail Kylo, Kylo failed him. Rey also says she won't fail Luke. Whether she means turning Kylo back to the light or defeating him, it's hard to tell. But I think she has it in her head that she can do the same for Kylo and turn him back to the light just like Luke turned Anakin back to the light side. But I think the biggest reason people have hope for Kylo and Rey is because of the third Force connection they share. The now famous scene where Rey sees Kylo with his chest exposed. I bet there would be half as many Reylo shippers if this scene didn't exist. I guess it was just too much for some people seeing Kylo without a shirt on, and their pent-up energy had to be focused into an imaginary relationship. Rey doesn't want to see Kylo in this way and asks him to get a towel on. For some reason, she wants to know why Kylo killed his father. Kylo plants more seeds of doubt in Rey's mind, saying her parents threw her away like garbage, she can't stop needing them, and it's her greatest weakness. Kylo then plants more doubt in Rey's mind by giving her his side of events and more details on his confrontation with Luke. Kylo wants Rey to think that Luke will also destroy her because of her power, just like Luke tried to destroy him. Rey is desperately trying to find her way in all of this, and Kylo knows it. He's trying to get Rey to leave Luke and come to him so he can train her and abuse her power. This causes Rey to play with fire as she gives into the call of the dark side cave that Luke warned her about earlier. But she's playing right into Kylo's hand here, who is being manipulated by Snoke, who is somehow involved with Palpatine. If I get the time, I will make a video about the underwater cave scene and how it could possibly connect the trilogies together. If you don't want to miss out on that one, make sure you subscribe so you know when it's released. After Rey doesn't see her parents in the dark side cave, she says,
I thought I'd find answers here. I was wrong. I'd never felt so alone.
Kylo then moves in and takes advantage of her in this vulnerable state. He tells her,
You're not alone.
and she replies,
Neither are you.
At this point, he seems way too chilled, like he took a massive Valium at the start of the movie and it's just fully kicked in. This is an example of a discrepancy between Kylo in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and this is where Rey first tries to turn him.
It isn't too late.
And then they share their first intimate touch. Now, I fully understand that this scene gives Reylowers a lot of hope, and take it out of context, it can come across as a very romantic scene, but thankfully, Luke steps in before things go too far. Rey is angry and acts out from the seeds of doubt Kylo has planted in her mind. Luke then gives what we can assume is the correct version of his confrontation with Kylo. Rey says she saw Kylo's future when they touched hands, and if she goes to see him, he will turn. I think it's important to mention here that Rey's motivation to see Ben is to save him from the dark side. It's not to go and fulfill some loving desire she feels for him. She's also desperate for someone to show her the ways of the Force. Luke isn't offering any help in this department, and Kylo has offered more than once to train Rey. I can't be 100% sure of what Rian Johnson's intentions are for these characters at this point, but if Rey is meant to have feelings for Kylo, they've developed way too fast. Just earlier that day, it was clear that she hated him. Snoke's plan has come together and Rey leaves to save Ben. When Kylo and Rey see each other again in the flesh, Rey looks so full of fear and they don't look like second date nerves either. Kylo just looks indifferent, and any romantic feelings he may have had for Rey during their forced touch seem to have vanished. He is back to going through the motions of getting Rey back to Snoke. Now, this is another scene that Reylo's ship is used to prove Kylo and Rey are in love. They talk about the tension between the two of them. And yes, there is a lot of tension in here, but it's not because of all the pheromones they can smell on each other. It's because Rey knows that she's moments away from meeting Snoke and that it's quite possible that if she can't turn Ben, she will die. She is one person surrounded deep by her enemies, two of them being some of the strongest Force users in the galaxy. Rey tells Kylo her vision of him turning to the light. Kylo tells Rey that he saw her turning to the dark side and that she will rule with him by his side. He also casually mentions that he saw who her parents were in his vision. Before leaving the elevator, Rey doesn't look too confident about what's going to happen. Rey meets Snoke and there's some dialogue between the two of them for a bit, then Snoke spills the beans and tells Rey that the Force connection her and Kylo shared had been fabricated by him. Also, the feelings Kylo exposed to Rey had been intentionally put there by Snoke, and possibly the vision she had of him turning to the light side if she went to see him. It's worth mentioning that if the vision Rey had of Kylo turning to the light side had been implanted into her mind by Snoke, the vision Kylo had of Rey's parents is more than likely false as well. The next sequence with Rey and Ben starts with mostly Snoke toying around with Rey. After mopping the floor with her, Snoke places Rey before Kylo so he can execute her. Kylo murders Snoke instead. A lot of people say Kylo did this because he loves Rey and that this should give the Reylo romance a few more points. But I think Kylo murdered Snoke so he could be like the grandfather he idolizes, Vader. Kylo also saved Rey so he could take advantage of her power. With Snoke out of the way and a manipulated Rey by his side, he can now be the Supreme Leader, destroy the Resistance, and also defeat his old master, Luke Skywalker. When Rey gets on her feet, she just looks relieved to still be alive. I don't think she's looking at Kylo with any adoration. The big fight happens. There's a bit of a grab for half a second, but other than that, both Rey and Kylo are fighting for their lives. After all the guards are defeated, Rey is immediately concerned for the Resistance fleet, but Kylo isn't. He wants nothing standing in the way of him becoming the Supreme Leader. Rey resists Kylo's invitation to join him, and the big fat Valium he took earlier just wore off really quick, all at once. All that fighting probably took it out of him. He's back to being the angry, hateful, power-hungry murderer that just wants Rey by his side for her power. If Rey couldn't use the Force, would Ben still want her? No. Ben doesn't love Rey, he loves her power. He lusts after her power. He wants her power for himself. One thing Rey has let Kylo know about is her longing to know who her parents are. When Kylo sees that he's losing Rey, he brings this up again to manipulate her. He offers her his hand, but Rey has gained her senses back and sees straight through him. If they did have romantic feelings for each other, even if they're small romantic feelings, they're now gone, and the two of them have entered into their struggle against each other again. Rey gains the upper hand when Holdo rams Snoke's ship and takes both pieces of the lightsaber and leaves Kylo for dead. This was the last time they saw each other face to face in the flesh during The Last Jedi. Kylo throws Rey under the bus, making her even more of a fugitive by telling Hux that she's the one who murdered Snoke. If he loved her, why would he place a massive target on her back like he just did? If she loved him, why did she leave him for dead on Snoke's ship? Calling this a toxic relationship is an understatement. Kylo and Rey definitely have a connection, but it doesn't have to be a romantic one. And after looking at all their scenes, it's hard to see it as a romantic connection. They represent good and evil, dark and light, sacrificial and possessive behaviors, giving and taking, male and female, love and hate. Every time Kylo does something, he does it to gain power and dominance, and it's all for him. When Rey does something, it's out of compassion and love, and she often doesn't gain anything from her actions. Kylo, who has been all over the galaxy and who probably grew up in a privileged life, just wants to keep taking. Rey, who can only ever remember being abandoned on Jakku, joined the Resistance as soon as she gained her freedom. She went out of her way to help a droid and a man she just met. These two characters contrast each other in so many ways that I just can't see a reciprocal romantic love between the two of them. At the end of The Last Jedi, as soon as Rey sees Finn, she runs straight into his arms. Moments later, Kylo puts his feels out for her through their shared Force bond, but it looks like she's trying to sever that connection. She put herself in extreme danger to save him from the dark side, and almost died while pulling him away from the darkness. I don't think Kylo did Rey any favors by sending the First Order ships after the Falcon or taking on her estranged mentor and attempting to murder him as well. As far as we know, Rey and Leia think Kylo killed Luke in battle. Both of them had no idea Luke was appearing as a Force projection. If you have ever watched someone in an abusive or toxic relationship, or if you've been in one yourself, you know that true freedom and true love cannot be found in them. And just like a true abusive manipulator, he tears Rey down, only to make her feel good again by saying, "You matter to me." This is similar to a guy verbally abusing his partner, only then to offer her flowers to confuse her even more. Manipulation will never end in love. And love is putting someone else's wants and needs before your own wants and needs. We see Rey do this, but not Kylo. Also, true love has actions, not just feelings and words. Don't get me wrong, I love the Reylo shippers. Part of me wants them to get the satisfaction they're longing for from these movies. It's been great hearing about all of these theories and people wanting Kylo to turn to the light side and be with Rey. But there's just more evidence for them being cousins than star-crossed lovers. So for me at least, the door on Reylo is closed. This has been the longest video I've ever made. If you're still here, I just want you to know that I appreciate you so much for watching this all the way to the end. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And remember, it doesn't matter what galaxy you're in, Jesus is Lord.